welcome to today's webinar. Ashley, are you happy to be here? I'm happy to be here.
I'm thrilled. Yes.
Good, good. We're off to a great start. Welcome to today's webinar, everybody. Let me introduce myself. My name is Louie. I'm on staff with ICN, which stands for Irresistible Church Network. And if this is one of your first times interacting with us, we are a network of churches all around the world that are designed to attract and engage unchurched people and inspire them to follow Jesus. And every now and then we do a webinar like this where we kind of bring you guys in to some of the kinds of conversations that we have in the network. And so today's conversation is going to be about the idea of irresistible environments. So in our network, we have seven ICN distinctives, and one of those seven distinctives is irresistible environment. So we're going to zero in on that one today. And so the topic of today's webinar is called Keep Them Coming Back, Creating Irresistible Church Experiences. But because I have no idea how to do that, I brought along a friend today that's going to share a little bit about what she does. So this is Ashley McNary. Ashley is the co-lead pastor of Heartland Church in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. So Ashley McNary from Sun Prairie. I've waited my whole life to say that rhyme. So Ashley, why don't you give everybody just a little snapshot of who you are and your family and stuff like that, and tell us where in the world Sun Prairie is.
I know, Sun Prairie. So we're a community right outside of Madison, Wisconsin.
Go
Uh,
Badgers.
John and I have just celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary. So we were babies when we got married out of college. And we have three kids. I've got an 18-year-old son, a 16-year-old son, and a 14-year-old daughter. So this year they are all in high school. We have a
Oh,
freshman or senior. So it's a lot and also so much fun. So
yeah. I have one high schooler right now, and that is enough. I can't imagine dealing with three
yeah,
simultaneously. So
three.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for well, actually, I was going to thank you for taking some time to be here, but you're probably like, yes,
Yeah.
give me anything.
Out of high school world. Yeah, no, it's great. I love being here. I love talking about this stuff.
Good, good. So here's a little bit how this is going to go. So the format for today is Ashley and I are going to have a conversation. I'm going to ask her some questions. We're going to talk through what irresistible environments and irresistible church experiences look like at Heartland Church for them in practical ways. And then after that, we're going to open it up for a Q&A for all of you guys. So as we're talking, go ahead and be typing your questions into the chat. Our team will be gathering those and curating those and getting those ready to queue up for Ashley after she and I have this conversation. So go ahead and begin doing that whenever you want to. And so kind of here's the expectations, though, is for Ashley, for this to be a practical, honest, in the trenches kinds of conversation. We don't want the philosophies and the things like that. We want to talk about, hey, here's what we're trying at our church. Here's what works. Here's what doesn't. Here's some
Yep.
things we wish we would have done differently. And that's kind of what we're going for here. So, in order to set the stage for all that, kind of before we jump in, can you give everybody a snapshot about Heartland Church and the community that you guys are serving there?
Yeah. Yeah. So John and I have been up here for 18 years. So we have spent a lot of time understanding our community. And one of the things that was the most surprising is when we moved, we were outside with our backyard neighbors and they were like, "What do you do?" And we're like, "We're pastors." And they were like, "Oh," like just a response that I was not necessarily used to. And so we learned quickly that our community, well, of course, there's people that love the church. A lot of our community is just a little untrusting of churches, and just to have for some of, church has gotten kind of a bad rap, sometimes unfairly and sometimes fairly. And so we recognize, okay, our community is just looking for a place that is going to say, it's okay. Like you might not totally, know what you believe yet, but you're welcome to come and be a part of what we're doing here. And we really just feel like we want to introduce everyone that we absolutely can to the life-changing relationship with Jesus. And so how can we best do that? So our community in particular is about 48,000 people. We're right outside of Madison, Wisconsin. So there's a little bit of the university and we're part of the capital city, but we also kind of sit, right outside of that. So it's a unique and really diverse community. So our mission is that we exist to awaken a diverse community to Jesus.
Mm.
And when we put that word in, we did that for a couple of reasons. One, we didn't want it's not to be a buzzword, right? It's not to just be something that like was trendy at the time. Honestly, it was to keep us accountable.
Yeah.
And because we recognize that our community, there are people that look different than us, that might think differently than us, that might vote differently, people that are vote differently than each other. And we want to build a church that is okay with all of that and saying, man, when we bring all of who we are and we can come together and focus on Jesus, like that is what matters the most. And so, it'd be easier probably sometimes to build a community in a church that it was just everyone, we all came in with the same experience, same perspective, same, we looked the same, had the same background, but we have recognized there's so much beauty and just being able to say, hey, come as you are, and we want to be able to pursue Jesus together.
Perfect. I love that. I love that. So even though irresistible environments is obviously one of our distinctives, and all of our churches in our network hold that distinctive, what about you personally? When you think about creating irresistible environments or irresistible church experiences, what does that phrase mean to you and your team in your context?
Sure. I think that when I think about if I were to go to something that was irresistible, I think of it in terms of so many things. I think one is, was I thought of, right? I think when everyone's nervous to walk into an environment and a space that they're not sure what they're walking into. And so we have tried really hard to say, okay, if you were new, if you have never been here before, would you walk in and feel like, I don't know what to do or how to engage or where to go and so how can we really like lower that bar and make people feel comfortable? I think what we've realized is how nervous people are walking into church for the first time because
Yeah.
they feel like they're walking into they're not sure. They're not sure what they're walking into. And so we want to just make sure the minute they open that door that it is like, oh, I've been thought of before I got here. They're expecting me. It's clean, it's easy to navigate. There's signage to tell me where to go. One small thing that we recognize is for a long time, we serve coffee and
Mhm.
we would just take donations, right? So we had donation boxes out. And if you're a regular here, if you have a buck, put it in. If you don't, no big deal. You go grab a cup of coffee. But for new people, we noticed they were hesitant. Like, is it an expectation? Oh, I don't have money. I won't grab coffee. And we were like, that to us feels like we don't want that to be a hindrance. So we just took the donation. We're like, it's free coffee because we don't
Right.
want people to have to feel awkward and uncomfortable engaging in that way. And so when we recognize, oh, this is something we didn't even think of, because to us, it's like, oh yeah, you don't have to put it in there. But to a new person, they're like, I don't know the rules here.
Yeah, and they're like, are there cameras? Are they
Right,
watching me?
right, right. Am I going to get in trouble? Is someone going to say something to me?
Look at
Um,
that person walking away with a latte and they didn't stop by the donation thing. Yeah, yeah.
totally. So I think just everything that we can, like, how do we walk in with the eyes of somebody who's new? And sometimes that takes us seeing things differently, changing things, putting signage somewhere. We obviously have a welcome team that is the first, hey, how are you? And we train our volunteers to be like, if they kind of look around, they don't know what they're doing. If they grab a I'm new here pamphlet, if you see someone walking with that, that's your invitation to engage and say, hey, is it your first time? We're so glad you're here. Let me know if I can do anything to help point you in the right direction. Sometimes it's just where's the bathrooms, right? And sometimes they're like, I don't know what to do. Or so we try to just from the get-go, from the beginning, think with a new person in mind. And we greet them in the service to say, hey, if you're new, welcome. We're so glad you're here. If you have questions, here's what you can do. And for our regular attenders, they have to listen to that every single week. And it's okay, because the biggest hurdle is somebody coming in saying, I'm just checking this place out and I want to know, am I welcome here? And when can I find a place here?
Right. And I hear people talk about that repetitiveness sometimes, if that's a word. I may have just made one up. But about your regular people hearing that all the time, but it actually also trains them over time to go, oh, this is a place where I can invite my unchurched friends, family members, neighbors, coworkers, because they hear you say it all the time. So
Right, right,
that's
right. Yeah,
perfect.
just an expectation. It's really cool. We don't, people will say like, do you teach evangelism or inviting? And I'm like, we actually don't have to. Like, people just
Mhm.
invite their friends, I think, because they know they're not going to be met with like, oh, why are you here? Do you, they're just like, yeah, come one, come all, doesn't, wherever you're at in your faith journey, like we want you to come and be a part of this place.
Yeah, so sometimes when I talk to people and we're talking about this aspect of irresistible environments, they totally get it through the lens of, oh, we have new people checking out our church. But those new people, maybe in their mind, they're like, oh, yeah, Christians, they're looking for a church and we want to make sure we welcome them and things like that. But there's also another level beyond that as well. So where we're creating environments for people that don't even believe yet. So in your mind, why is it so important to create irresistible environments where people can belong before they even believe?
Yeah. I think that I think about it we think about sometimes in terms of like dating. It feels like sometimes where people walk in and we're like, offering marriage first. And they're like, whoa, I don't even know. I don't even know like what you're about, and who you are. And so we make it really easy for people to stay for a while. We even say, hey, we have a Connect card. We have a free gift for you. If you're interested, you don't have to sign up. You don't have to do anything for it. Just say I'm new. We'll give you a gift. If and when you're ready, we'd love for you to fill out a Connect card and come and just get more information, on kind of what Heartland is all about. But I think that when people feel like they're not expected to like, sign on the dotted line or have all these answers or believe the exact same things, when they feel like they can just show up and ask questions and they can show up and, wrestle through the things. Because a lot of times when people are unchurched, they do come with hurt. They do come with baggage. They do come with bad experiences, right, wrong, or green of a church, whether it was intended or not or misintended. It just they come in with a lot of times with a thing. And so we want to make that really easy to say, we see that thing. We see that that's, hard for you. And we want to meet you there. We want to, meet you in that space. I think even just in our language, when we set up, standing and singing together, if you're unchurched, is weird. Like it's just weird, and we know it as worship.
Karaoke, right? Group
Yeah.
karaoke. Get the word
And
to
I'm
the
like, I love worship. Worship is, I experience the Holy Spirit in that way. But if you don't, people are like, what are we doing?
Mhm.
And so we're quick to, a lot of times in the front of our service, like, hey, we're going to stand and this is why we do this. It's not because it's just tradition. It's not because this is what churches do. Like we believe that there's something that song does that words can never do. And so when we stand and when we sing and when we engage in this way, but we believe God can speak to our lives and we center ourselves on him. We get to offering and it's like, we get it. Churches and money get weird. If you're new, let the basket pass you by. There's never going to be pressure to participate in this way. But we believe this is such a cool way that we get to impact God's kingdom and do this together. And so cast vision around those things. Communion, we have a lot of people that grew up Catholic or Lutheran and experience closed communion or, so everyone gets a communion cup and they're like, oh my goodness, am I going to get in trouble? What do I do? How do I, and so we're easy to say, hey, you don't have to partake in this. If you're still on the fence of your faith, like nobody's going to bat an eye if you set your communion cup down. But for those of us who know what this means and this matters, but if you're interested, join us. And I know that's different for denominations and some people see that differently, but I think there's more of we can kind of help people navigate their journey here to like
Yeah.
the why behind what we do and not just assuming that people know what we're doing.
That's so good because sometimes when I'm talking to people, they think that in order to create an irresistible environment for unchurched people, that we have to take away or strip away all the traditional things that the church has done for centuries.
Right.
Um, and that's not the case. The case is just make sure we're bringing people along,
Yes.
assuming that unchurched people in the room and explaining why we do what we do. I love that. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Let's jump in a little bit further into this idea of creating irresistible environments when it comes to the physical spaces. That's the main thing people usually think about. They're like, what is the physical space? And then in a second, we'll jump back over into the emotional and relational stuff. But for the physical space, what are some intentional choices that Heartland makes when it comes to like lobby, auditorium, kids
Yep.
areas, that help people feel welcome and safe
Yep.
right away? Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, it's something that makes sense. Like the flow makes sense. Signage is critical because people don't want to have to ask somebody, where to go and what to do. So as many times, and sometimes we'll even walk in and be like, "Oh, people aren't finding the kids check-in. We need to move the kids check-in. We need to make it visible. You know, the more that people can figure it out on their own without having to feel like, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah.
So signage is really important. Yeah, honestly, just cleanliness, like making sure everything, you know, we just did a build out. So our building looks awesome and new and, you know, and which is great. But prior to that, for 10 years, we existed in our weird looking, like we had a weird looking lobby situation. But
What was the space? Were you in a
it's just
rented
like a
facility or?
long, weird hallway with a weird, you know, back door. We were in a strip mall kind of
Okay.
situation, but we only occupied, you know, certain amount of the space. And so there was, you know, 80 doors it felt like before you got to our door. So, you know, I'm like, well, so that people aren't just checking random doors, we put signage like, keep going, you're on your way. This isn't the door, but the next one is, you know, just so that people could, we were trying to see it through their eyes. So physical space to us, making sure we welcome people with all abilities and disabilities alike. And so being really intentional about doors, about counter height space, about wheelchair accessibility, about some, you know, we offer headphones and, you know, things for people who may have a noise sensitivity, are, you know, just making sure all of our spaces have things that feel like if somebody walks in, I mean, I think what we want people to say is when they walk in, they say, oh, they want to awaken their diverse community to Jesus. And they walk in and they say, they mean it. Like they mean it. And so it's not just words, like we put our actions. And when, you know, when things get in the way, we fix it and we figure out a way to make sure that, yeah, that Jesus is accessible to all. So we want to make sure that that happens. We put a playground, one of our big dreams. So we have a big wooden playground right outside of our kids' space that kids just get to play on throughout the morning. And then we open it up for free throughout the week, just as a way to say, hey, come to our community, come to inside this building. Maybe that's your first time inside of a church and you realize like, oh, it's not that scary. And then maybe you'll want to, you know, check it out on a Sunday. But we just want to, as best we can, offer our building and our space, you know, in a clean, like you can expect that it's going to be taken care of environment. So that's kind of our physical,
Yeah.
we engage in our physical space.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know when you look at your guys' website and well, the website itself, but then also when you can see pictures of the building and things like that on the website, everything looks great. It looks excellent, but there's also the look and feel of it all also feels very real and authentic. So how do you guys balance like excellence with authenticity, you know, so that your environment feels warm and not fake or manufactured or something like that?
I think this is that. I think this is the balance, right? It's that, yeah, you don't want to manufacture something with such rigidity that you lose the human element, but you don't want to lean too much into like, oh, we're just human, that it feels, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think it honestly starts with the leadership, if I'm honest, like that we try, that we show up as human beings, but who
Hmm.
are trying to create a distraction free, like well thought out and well intended experience for people. And so we talk a lot about like what's just being distraction free. So that might mean, you know, song lyric, like we talk, you know, we talk a lot about song lyrics and it sounds so silly, but if I want to sing a song and I don't know the words, and the song lyrics don't lead me and I don't know what's coming next, like I can't engage in that. And then I'm thinking like, what's the next word? What's the next word? Well, then all of a sudden I'm not in worship because because it's important to just be able to like engage. So when song lyrics are like all over the map, you know, if it takes people out of experiencing what they're supposed to experience, you know, when you know, just who we show up is just sloppy and unprepared, I think it becomes, you know, it can be a distraction. And yet,
Yeah.
if it's like, I say this like a robot and I don't actually bring my own human experience, I think people are like, this feels
That's
camp.
also distracting. So there's
Yeah,
distractions on either end, kind of.
totally. It feels like this is too much. And so, really threading that needle and leading with heart, being humans, making a mistake. There was one service that I was supposed to open the service and I forgot. And so countdown ended and there's nobody up there. So I'm sprinting through the room. If I do this every week, that's obnoxious. But I'm out of breath. I like cannot recover. It was embarrassing, but it also showed like I'm going to forget sometimes, Now, again, if I do that every week, that just becomes irresponsible. But,
Right.
able to like be human and be forgetful and also, but like really pursue excellence. It's that, yeah, it's that distinction. So I think for us, it's like, how do we become a place that's eliminating as many distractions for people as possible without being, yeah, manufactured.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, so that's the physical side of environments. I know that's a bulk of what a lot of people think of in this. And so if you guys have more questions about that, throw your questions in the chat and we can talk more about physical spaces a little bit later. Right now, I want to move back over kind of to the emotional, relational environment that you're creating at your church. And I know you gave a couple examples of this earlier when we were talking about the importance of creating places where people can belong before they believe. But how do you guys create a culture, a holistic culture where people feel safe to bring their doubts and questions to a church?
Sure. Honestly, I think it's because on our staff, we've all had them, and so we're quick to say,
What?
I
No
know,
way.
I
Oh
know.
no.
We're quick to say, like, me too. Like, if
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
wondering how God works in the mess of all this, me too.
yeah.
And I have wondered and I have wrestled and we have had to ask hard questions. And I'm not totally sure how like prayer works in all areas. And I've been, humbled in this in some ways, and I've been challenged in this in some ways. And so I think for us to be careful to not just put the Christian bow on it and not also come with saying like, I I also ask these questions, but not
Mhm.
to sit in the like doubt, but to wrestle our faith through to be able to experience those things. And I think, so I think that I think we do that in kind of what we share. I think we do that um, in just in how we lead.
Yeah.
We did a series a couple last year that was called Deconstructing Together, and our bumper videos kind of going into each service was one of our staff members talking about how they wrestled with that question
Oh
and
yeah.
why, I mean, and then kind of a little bit of like how that led them to find a different perspective. But it was real and it was raw and it was hard. And, our staff team has experienced some pretty immense tragedy, and our church knows that. And so I think being honest to be able to say, hey, we're in this together and we're doing this together, and we might not have all the answers, and we may walk in spaces and that feel confusing, and it's okay. It's okay to feel that and to still come and be like, we still believe Jesus is the answer.
I love that. That's such a better thing than some tactic or strategy. Just go, oh, it's because we have questions and and yeah, I love that. That's so good.
Yeah, I've had to wrestle through lots of things
Yeah,
myself.
yeah. So here's the fun part. We're talking about physical spaces and all these things. Let's talk about an actual person, a real person. Can you share a story of someone who, at your church who felt like they belonged at your church before they actually believed in Jesus and were following Jesus? And how did the environments you guys create kind of help shape their journey?
Yeah. I mean, I'm thrilled to say I could tell you a ton of stories. I mean, this is when we just
Hey, we got time. We got time. Let's
we
just
just
keep
did our
it up.
baptisms this past summer. We baptized over 55, 56 people in August, and we invite them to tell their story, to come in and film their story. They don't have to. It's not a prerequisite, but it's so cool to hear so many of their stories and how so many of them walked in jaded at the church, unsure if Jesus was even real. There was one woman who she lost her spouse 3 years ago, and her spouse was very involved in the church kind of growing up. And how she just was like, but when I lost him, was I didn't know what to do. And so I was angry and I was bitter and I blamed God. And yet through this, he loved the church, and he had loved Heartland. And so I thought, well, I might give it a shot. And so after years of angerness and bitterness, she came and she was like, I didn't know what I believed. I actually was really, really mad. And I walked in and I just kind of felt all of that melt away. And she jumped into just learning more about who Jesus was and realized like she had a plan and a purpose for her life. And so she ended up getting baptized this
Oh
uh,
my gosh.
summer. And it was amazing. It was amazing to see that come full circle and to recognize, even in such tragedy and such loss, um, someone else's faith and their experience of being able to be a safe, this for Heartland to be a safe place, like brought them back to Jesus. But I would say, I mean, so many, I get to lead the welcome team, which I love, but so many of the people, even that serve on the welcome team, were like, I want to do this because I was so scared walking in this place, and now my life
Yeah.
has been changed, and so I want to help welcome other people. And so
Yeah.
when that's the heart behind it, and we tell them that all the time, I'm like, there's no way that the 14 of us staff can impact the thousands of people that walk in these doors, the
Right.
thousands that walk in these doors. That's the people here, and that's because they experienced it for themselves, and then they get to live that out, and that's awesome.
That's perfect. That's actually a great segue to the next question I was going to ask you. Uh, because a lot of times we think about creating environments, we're just thinking about people like experience them or being spectators of those environments in a way, very passively experiencing those. Well, let's talk about how you create experiences or irresistible environments that actually engage and involve people. So, like, once someone starts attending, how do you help them move from consumer to participant in the life and mission of the church? I love how you talked about the greeters. They're like, hey, I was scared. Now I want to be a greeter so I can help other people not be scared. So how do you guys do that?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have a couple of ways, and we've kind of really tried to really make this clear. I think what we realized is when we have too many things, people don't know where to go and what to do. So
Yeah.
I like variety, and so I kind of made the mistake early on of like, no, there's so many ways that you could get involved, but like I think everyone's like, I don't know how to find that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so we do a couple things. One, we say often, the best way to get connected is to join a team. So we invite every single person to jump on a team because that's where you can make a big church feel small. And then we're like, okay, if we're going to say this is the best way to get connected, then it's our job as team leaders and as staff to ensure it's not just a cute phrase, that people are feeling connection. And so
Yeah.
that looks different for every team and what that looks like. So for like my team in particular, they serve all Sunday. And so that middle service, that's the busiest service. We're like, don't go attend that one, attend the other ones. But we do connection time, and I just have like 8 icebreaker questions. And so that team sits around and gets to know each other. We laugh. It's very fun. And so like that's how we create connection on our team. So we would say, the
Yeah.
best way to get connected, now all of a sudden you know people and you know funny stories about them. And we do that every single week.
Cool.
Um, and then we have 2 different things. We kind of every other month we alternate. We have a Meet the Pastors event. Then we invite them. It's a free lunch that John and I host, and we just tell them a tiny bit of our story, like just not the boring parts, but how we became to like love this community and be here at our church, our heart for the church and our community, and then a little bit of the story of Heartland, because I think it's important for people to know like kind of what they're caught up in, right? There's a history here. And we want them to feel like if somebody says something like, oh, I didn't know that, if they want to get involved, we want to, and we do it quickly and we do it with images and, story, and try to keep it, concise, obviously. Like nobody wants to sit through a boring like church history meeting. But really the vision, here's our mission, here's our vision, here's our core values. Like this is what you're going to hear, and this is what you're invited to be a part of. And
Yeah.
then we have something called Next Step, which is if you want to take a next step, come to Next Step. And then that's where we kind of talk about a little bit more of, okay, if you want to go a little bit deeper, there's teams, and then our growth tracks. There's kind of, if you really want to really grow in your faith and be known on a deeper level, here's other things you can do, baptism, that kind of thing. So more of a spiritual next step.
Yeah.
And so that kind of follows that progression.
I love that. I love the concept. Sometimes we think of, all right, we're creating these irresistible environments, but if I'm volunteering, I'm creating the irresistible environment for someone else, which is true. But you guys see, even being on the volunteer team is an irresistible environment for the actual volunteer. Like that's a place they're like, being poured into by other people and experiencing community. And I love that.
And,
That's
and
a
this
great.
came from me. Like, I would lead an organization that requires volunteers. And so I want to be intentional that what my kids are involved in and what they do, like I volunteer back. But
Yeah.
the amount of times I've gone to a thing, I'm like, hello? Like, is anyone like who's here to? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know. Nobody introduced me to these people. So, I mean, I do the job of being like, my name is this, and what do
Yeah,
you do?
yeah,
But there's not that environment. I feel very awkward. I don't know really what I'm supposed to do. And so it took me stepping into other spaces where I'm the new person and I
yeah,
don't know anyone. And to think, okay, well, I don't want, no shade on them, but I'm like, I don't want to create that environment for our volunteers. So when they show up, do we have a name tag for them? Are we greeting them saying like, we're so glad you're here. Thanks for jumping on this team. We get to pray together. We get to know each other. And when we can do that and foster that, it creates, people want to come back. They're like, I loved it. I love it.
yeah.
I want to do this again.
That's perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
so speaking of volunteers, I know sometimes when we're talking about creating irresistible environments, definitely the lead pastors get it. Hopefully, usually the whole staff gets it, but sometimes people are like, "Yeah, my volunteers just don't get it. They're not creating the kinds of irresistible environments, that we would want them to. We're having a hard time making that a reality." So how do you guys equip your volunteers, not just where they feel like they're belonging, but equip them, and the rest of your staff as well, so that they can embody this vision of creating irresistible environments where it has gone throughout your organization and all
Yeah.
the people that you're mobilizing through staff and volunteers, and not just something that you and John
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
and just wonder why nobody else is committed as you are. Like how do you actually do that, equip them, train them, mobilize them?
Yeah. Vision and stories. Those are the two huge things. I think it's important to continue to keep that vision in front of people. Every year we do a team training party. So anything I can throw a party in front of, I do. So
Yep.
I'm like, nobody wants to come to a team training, but they might want to come to a team training party.
Yes, there we go.
We honor them, we feed them, good food, and then we do kind of every single volunteer we invite to come. We give them a gift and we say thank you. John gives, a message of just like inspiration. Then we tell stories and we say this is why this matters. These are why like these families that wouldn't have a place to go otherwise. If they have a child, with a disability, like they get to come here and listen to what happened through this. We had a woman who was her son is autistic and they were like, we're unchurched. She's like, I don't know anything about church. And he came to me and said, do you know the greatest superhero is Jesus? She was like, where did you hear that? She's like, I don't know. But he started asking about faith. So we were like, well, I think we should explore this. And so they looked for a church that would be able to accommodate her son and not just accommodate, but like love him and meet him where he was at. So they found Heartland. He started coming. I mean, they came for him. And she was like, I was blown away by the message of Jesus, joined one of our exploring growth tracks, which they can just start asking questions about Christian faith. And then she ended up getting baptized. And she's now serving on the Heartland Kids team because that is where she, landed. So I think when we can tell that story and say, like, this is why you do it matters, it's not just showing up for an hour on Sunday. Like, it's actually transformed. Like, it's not us. Jesus transforms lives, but we can create the environment that people feel safe to come. So we try to share stories. When we hear that, we love to just email our teams. If I get an email about somebody's experience, I take the name out and any distinguishing factor, but I send it to the welcome team and say, this is what you guys get to be a part of, whether they served on Sunday or not, so that they know it's not just opening a door.
Right.
It's being a part of something that matters. So the more that we can share stories with our teams of people who impacted or experienced Heartland and Jesus in a different way, like the more that we can do that. And I think those are what inspires more than like just a reminder, be
Right.
friendly.
Yeah.
Of course, sometimes you need that too, but but I think when people see the bigger why behind why we do this, that fuels that flame.
I love that. Yeah, the stories are always so inspiring. I think that's a great thing to remember. We can't tell them enough. We can't tell them in as many enough environments, tell them in different ways, in person, video, have the
Yeah.
person tell their story. Yeah, I love all that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, So everybody, we're very close to getting to the Q&A. So if you still have a question in mind that you would like Ashley to address, put your question in the chat. Before we get to the Q&A though, Ashley, I have one last question that I would love for you to talk about. I know you've talked about a lot of great things, practical things, inspiring things, but is there anything that you'd want to encourage leaders with who might feel overwhelmed trying to create these kinds of experiences? They may be listening to you, and I know you guys are several years into this, and you've got some success stories, and are doing a great job. And they may be like, "Oh, I don't even know how to get started." So, how would you encourage some leaders listening to this, that might be feeling overwhelmed?
My husband is known for weird statements. And so maybe you're familiar with this, maybe not, but he always reminds us the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And
Yep.
I think when it feels like we've got to change everything, that's unsustainable. Nothing sticks. It feels discouraging. And so yeah, it's just what's the first thing that just kind of becomes a snowball effect. We could build a brick wall and try to do it all together, and I think it topples down. But it's like when we, put some solid bricks and some solid foundation, let the cement dry, and that becomes the culture. It just becomes easier and easier and easier to build on. And so I would say, yeah, where it can feel overwhelming, starting small and starting in one thing that feels, and then when you can have stories that was an impact, that's the kind of thing that snowballs. But yeah, big giant overhauls sometimes can just be overwhelming and unsustainable if it's not, met with something that people can actually do and that we can take. So I think it would just, yeah, be start somewhere, but because it matters, man, there's people who are looking, they're hungry and thirsty and wanting to find something that's real. And it's a, yeah, it's a huge blessing. I remember just praying about this and being like, Lord, sometimes it'd be easier to build a church for church people
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
it's complicated. It is, it's messier. But I just feel like he gave me this vision of this bridge, in on the one side is this kingdom, and
Mhm.
there just is this bridge. And he's like, I want you to stand on the other end of that bridge, clinging as tightly as you can to the bridge while reaching as far out as you can to the people that need to find this. And so, like, you have to stay anchored to him, obviously, but your heart is to not go on the other side of the bridge and call to them, be like, hope you can find it, but to like reach as far as you can while still staying anchored to him. And so,
Oh,
like, yes, Lord, like that's what we want to do. We want to be as far out of a reach as we can so that we can help see people. We're not the bridge, but once they
yeah.
cross that and meet Jesus, like game over. So,
Gosh, that's awesome. I love that perspective though, because sometimes people confuse this idea of irresistible environments with being cool or trendy or something like that, in which maybe there are aspects of that that are relevant to certain communities and cities of certainly, but that's not the point. The point is helping people across the bridge with everything that's in you, and sometimes the environments that we're creating are what help make that
yeah.
happen. So I love that perspective. Okay, cool. So we do have some questions from people here on the webinar with us, guys. There's still time if you want to add to these. Keep putting your questions in the chat, and we'll get to those as well. But let's start off. Actually, two different people asked this question, Andrew and Kitty, and I was assuming this would come up. So people would love to hear from you your perspective how portable churches can implement the helpful tips that you've shared today about creating irresistible environments, specifically physically, and when they're in portable situations with lobby and signage. I know you talked about you guys are in a different building situation than you're in now. I don't know if you guys have been portable or what, but would you want to address that at all?
Yeah, so when we were doing our build out, we did have to go portable for 7.5 months. So
Okay.
while some of you are like 7.5 months, I've been doing this for a decade portable.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel your pain a little bit, but
Mhm.
for those of you who are in it for a long time, that is amazing. But that's where I'm like, there are limitations, but I think even rolling with the limitations, I think we used a lot of tongue in cheek, which, was we we went from you could always have coffee in the auditorium, in our auditorium, to now we're in this environment and they wouldn't let us, so we made a
Yeah.
sign that's like, oh, bummer, we wish you could bring your coffee in, but we want to honor the school. So here's a table that you can leave your mug, and we promise it'll be, here when you get back. Like
Yeah.
anytime that you can create some fun and just some banter with people,
Yeah.
even in signage of like, we know this is a super long hallway. Here's something to think about as you walk it, just ways that feel like you're creating something that's like, oh, that's funny. Like that's a funny thing to do. So I think in a portable church, there's so many opportunities to create an irresistible environment, with signage, with just fun things that you get to have in that space, poking fun at, and with being honoring to the space, right? You're grateful for
Right.
the space, like you don't want to diss on the space, but
Yeah.
having fun with the actual environment and calling it out. Like, we know it's a long walk to the bathroom. People would put, mints in there, and they would put, just ways that feel like, make it feel like you see that this is awkward, but we're going to try our best to make this as feel like us while we're in this space.
That's so good, just the idea of owning it. Like, because if you try to pretend like it's not that way, then you seem tone deaf of like, do they not realize how long this hallway is? But if you own it and you kind of make fun of yourself a little bit and don't take yourself too seriously, people are like, oh, they get it, they understand that.
Yeah, sometimes on the stage when we were they would have a play set, and we're like, well, we're it's instant karma today.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to be like, but maybe you want to come back and support our community. And so just being able to have fun with where you're at, where you're, what you're doing, and is I think, yeah, I think it kind of helps everyone take a
Yeah.
deep breath and not get, frustrated.
Yeah. And they give you some grace and some of that stuff. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, here's a different one. Here's a question. So we've been talking about like physical spaces and emotional, relational environments. What about digital stuff? So I guess they're also part of creating irresistible environments is before people even show up physically, they're on our website, social media pages. Kind of what role do you guys see creating irresistible digital environments, website, social media, online services? What role does that play in creating irresistible experiences for first-time guests?
For sure. I think that we are recognizing how much people engage with us digitally before they walk in our doors. The amount of people that say, I watched a service or I watched several services before I came, is huge. And so we know when we're streaming our middle service, where we try our best to say, hey, if you're joining us, we're so glad you're here. Thanks so much for joining. It means sometimes the teacher will say something to the online audience.
Yeah.
And just knowing that to do that well does matter. And then making sure, this is so silly, but things are up to date. And sometimes we're not, I mean, for the most part, we're really good at this, but like, okay, service times, have we changed it in all of the spaces? Have we changed it on Google? We end up changing our service times a lot. So it's kind of like, and that's where we poke fun of ourselves. We're like, hey,
Yeah.
if you're around here, you need to know we mess with service times. Like it's just part of who we are. And so making sure, but we know we have to send that out in an email. We have to announce it. We have to put it on social media for a month before that happens, because, and inevitably people will be like, I didn't know you were, I'm like, we emailed 100 times. But trying to create ways that we just make sure all of our information is, up to date and accurate, and that it's easy and clean and nice. And so that's where, we'll often go to our website. Like if a new person came, is this insider language, or is this, it's people the most go to our about page, because we can track where they go, our about page, our events, and our staff page. So they're checking out like, what is this church all about? And so we want to make sure that if they go to those pages, that they, are true to who we are, they're updated, they look nice, and people can navigate. And you don't have to be an insider to know where to go.
Well, that's smart even to pay attention to the analytics of exactly where on your website people are actually going. For some people, they're like, that was worth the whole webinar. We never even look at that. Yeah, so that's great. Here's another. This is a great question. I've gotten this before too. So how do you balance creating an irresistible space outside of the auditorium? Like you've created some amazing place for people to hang out, talk, meet with their friends. You mentioned a cafe, that kind of stuff. How do you balance that with actually getting people to move in to the auditorium? Some churches have a late arriving crowd into the auditorium for either the first the cold opener or the welcome or the announcements or the first song, whatever you start with. Sometimes people are like, yeah, nobody's in here because everybody's out there hanging out in this amazing environment we created. How do you
Yeah.
guys balance that at
Yeah.
Heartland?
Yeah, so for us, we do a count, our building, we have a countdown that's always running, and so people can know. We actually have the same last 60 seconds of our countdown that plays every single week, and it's a music cue, I think, for people
Okay.
to know, oh, there's a difference here.
Yeah.
I know this music. This means we've got a minute left.
Yeah.
Up until then, this is another thing. We know that if you're new, sometimes you go in early and you sit there, and we don't do bulletins anymore. It's just a lot of paper, a lot of cutting, but we put all of our information on our screen so people have something to read. And then we
Mhm.
actually do have a video. We have 3 videos that are different from different people, kind of addressing the new person. Like, hey, if you're new here, here's what you should know about our church. Like, this is who we are. This is and so we have 3 that are in rotation. So that kind of, when people start hearing talking, then they start thinking, oh, we should probably get in. And then we have that 60-second, like almost audio cue to say, oh,
Yeah.
churches, and we, bump up the volume a little bit.
Okay, so those 3 videos that you rotate, those happen before the 60-second cue.
Yep. Yep. And
Okay.
it's just the same thing, that shift of sound of it
Mhm.
gives people who are new and are sitting in our auditorium something to listen to about their church, about what they're about to experience. And it kind of, it's not such white noise in the background. It's like
Yeah.
people, even in the lobby, are like, oh, someone's talking. So whether that's on a screen or they hear the cue, if you can get some of that audio that's in the main auditorium out there,
Mhm.
the
That's a good point because I've watched a lot of church services, and a lot of times people just have the same exact pre-service music with the same exact slide all the way to 0, and then the worship leader starts like, "Hey, everybody stand up," and nobody's in there because nothing ever got their attention for several
right.
minutes before that. So that's a great tactic.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So the answer is not don't create an amazing environment outside the auditorium, right?
No, no.
Still do that.
And,
Yeah.
and they create an amazing environment in there that
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
are like, I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss it. Yeah, that just feels engaging. It feels like I want to be in there. I want to be part of something. I want to worship. I understand the value. I'm not just going through the motions that, I'm here for 1 hour and I want to make this hour count. And so we do our best to, I mean, obviously the end goal, point people to Jesus. It's
Yeah.
not about performance. It's not about, creating something people like. But if we can create something that touches people's hearts and souls and meets them where they're at, like that, people engage in just a very different way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay, so this is a good question. It might be broad, or maybe you're like, oh no, I know exactly what they're talking about. This question is, what are some best practices for measuring the effectiveness of environments? They didn't specify the environment, but like, do you have anything like that that comes to mind?
Yep. Yeah. So we track how many gifts we've given out. We track
Okay.
how many Connect cards that we have had, and we track how many like plan your visit. We have a button on our website that says plan your visit, and people who basically pre-tell us that they're coming,
Yeah.
and then we can set up and say, hey, tell us what service you'll come to. We will meet you there. One of our volunteers will meet you there and just give you a tour, like let you know where you're at. So in this past year, we had almost 500 Connect cards filled out.
Okay.
And so then what we do is we try to see, okay, out of all of those, how many have attended to meet the pastors, taken a next step, joined a team, gotten baptized, join a growth track? Like, are there metrics in there that we can say, because if we have 500 Connect card and then we never see them again, well,
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Right.
Some things like a disconnect. And so the more people that we can recognize, oh, they're taking one of these steps to be able to kind of get into, and so we kind of check at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and a year to see how many of these people have been able to take one of these steps to get plugged in. And so that's how we kind of track some of that stuff. When we do like trunk or treat, or when we do Easter extravaganza, things that get people in our building, We try to get emails and then say, hey, we'd love to, just send, they're in a different database, but just like, hey, we'd love to invite you back to this weekend. Or if you're looking for a church, we don't want to be weird. If you're not, it's okay. But if you do, like, we'd love to have you come and check it out.
I love that. So do you have any of those things you track, like you said, the 500 Connect cards? Well, do you have any benchmarks for percentages you want to do? Or is it just like, hey, here's what we did last year and we're going to try to improve that this year? Or are there any
Yeah,
advantage?
it's a great question. We probably should. It's new. That kind of tracking is newer to us in the
Uh,
last 18 months. And so I
okay.
think trying to get even just a benchmark of like where are we at
Yeah,
now?
the baseline. Here's what we do. Here's what
What
we
what
do.
is, yeah, like
Yeah.
what's expected
Uh,
and so so that's yeah, I think it'd
yeah,
be
that's great. That's great. I didn't know if you were had, we want to get certain percentage of those volunteering within 12 months. I don't know. So next webinar, come
right.
ready for that.
Yeah, get the
I love
metrics in.
all right. So maybe you touched on this, but address it specifically of first time guests. Do you send them a follow-up text, follow-up email, both? How do you engage them when they tell you they're a
Yeah.
first time guest?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's three ways that we could engage with a first-time guest. One is through a planner visit. So it's a planner visit button. I think that's through Church Fuel, and so they help you kind of set that up. And then it's a kind of a text email chain that people can say they can, pre-register their kids if they want to come to a kid service, or put their kids in kids. And so that's one way. And then we would follow up with those individuals. Hey, saw you came. Let us know if there's any questions, your experience. The second would be just we offer a free gift with they don't have to fill anything out.
Mhm.
So if that's the case, we don't know anything. We know that they took a gift and then we're not sure who they are. We hope that eventually they'll move to fill out a Connect card.
Right.
But those are more just like, I'm not totally sure, how I think about this church thing, but I'll take a free mug that says
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
says together. And then the third would be a Connect card, which they kind of then check information of like, I would like more information about this, and so then that's kind of a form of the email that we follow up and say, hey, here's some things, here's ways to get involved. We always in their bag, always put the next meet the pastors or next step, like whatever is next, they get a card with that date on it to say, hey, if
Okay.
you the QR code, hey, if you're interested, register for this. And then that's our follow up on both of those two is whatever the next thing is, we invite them to that.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
What was the tool that you mentioned that you used for first? Was it Church Fuel? Is that what you said?
But yep. Yep. It's called Plan Your Visit. So it integrates
Okay.
right into your website and you set it up in a way. And there's got to be somebody obviously that manages that, but it's been awesome for
Okay.
us.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Somebody right now is.
Honestly, I wasn't sure it would work. There's part of me, I'm like, who, I don't know who's going to do that. But we've had, again, 400 in the since we started it last fall. People click Plan Your Visit and tell us, I'm coming on Sunday. Like, yeah, I'd love to meet you.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Okay. We'll have one last question for you. But then before we get to that, though, I want to let everybody know about our next webinar. So our next webinar is coming up. Actually, it's a quick one. It's only in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, maybe. I don't know. October 1st at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking about another one of our ICN distinctives, which is for our communities. And this one specifically is called For Your City: How to Build a Church Your Community Can't Live Without. Our partner church in Aurora, Colorado, right outside Denver, they're going to be joining us for that, giving some practical ways they do this through their For Aurora campaign. So it's going to be really cool. Make sure you guys put that on your calendar. Registration for that will come out soon, and can't wait to see you guys there for that. All right. So this last question that I wanted to ask you about, this one is from Nancy, and she submitted this, and she's want to know what are some ways that you help members of your church connect with one another in these environments, as opposed to just connecting with the serve teams and the staff, or is that the way you do it? So maybe address that for a second.
Yeah. So I think that our serve teams are just the easiest way to jump in without being like, you've got to talk about, deep stuff. That's where we're like, the best way to just get connected to somebody if you're walking into a church and you don't know people's names, this allows you to do that and give back and be a part of something, bigger than yourself. But then we do something called growth tracks. And so essentially small group experiences. We'd have men's, women's, co-ed. And so it kind of like, we have an exploring track for people who are exploring their faith. We have a practicing track for people who are looking to put into practice some of those spiritual disciplines. We've got a cultivating track that we do the rooted curriculum through that. We've got a studying track of people who just want to study the Bible. John just opens his Bible, says, let's go verse by verse.
Yeah.
And so we've kind of leaned into creating, small group experiences that kind of are geared towards like this thing. They're about
Yeah.
8 to 10 weeks. A lot of times those groups continue on and they do another track, if you will.
Hmm.
But creating those environments for people to go a little bit deeper and really be known and know others and go on more
Yeah.
of a deeper spiritual journey. So that's how we do that.
I love that. This is where some of the icing distinctives kind of overlap, where creating an irresistible environment, part of that is creating what we would call being intentional about relational discipleship. Those relational discipleship growth tracks, like you're talking about, are a form of environment that you're creating for people to connect with one another and grow spiritually. So that's cool. Thank you. That's awesome. Um, Side note, our last webinar was all about these kinds of relational discipleship growth track. So if you want to check out our YouTube page, you can check out last month's as well. So that's all we have for today, Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been so helpful, so practical, so inspiring. I loved hearing just your personal heart in all this and what you guys are doing at Heartland. And I know this is so helpful to everybody watching and listening today. So thank you for giving us some time.
Yeah, happy to. I love this stuff.
Good. Thank you everybody for joining us. Can't wait to see you 2 weeks for that next webinar. Until then, have a great week. Let us know if you need anything at all. See you guys. Bye, Ashley.
See you later.